So here we are in week 5 of agency operations and legalities. Now on Canvas and on this screen here, you see class number 2. This is actually class 1, this of week 5. This is the Thursday of our Thursday-Friday classes. The reason is because tomorrow we have our guest speaker. Her name is Kate Neufeld, and she's coming in from the Flight Center. Next week, we have another guest speaker on the Friday, and that will be the Vice President of Operations for TECO. And then I just looked it up. We have another guest speaker after that, a few weeks after reading week, March 11th, I believe I said, which will be a representative from ACTA, the Association of Canadian Travel Agencies, and she will pre-record her session. So I'll post it to Canvas, and we won't be meeting live that day, which I think is March 11th. It's week 9, I believe. Oh, it's on your learning plans. Okay, so lots to get through today. Let's get started. So according to IATA, at least 2 staff have to be employed full-time at a travel agency for a travel agency to operate. You need a manager of some sort and then another person. And each of them have to meet standards of IATA, so they need experience. But experience isn't defined in any way. You just have to pass a test. So it doesn't say you need to be working for 6 years before you can become a manager. It just says you have to have enough experience. So that leaves things open for growth and quick growth too. I mean, when you work at a travel agency, I've seen it where people, well, really quickly can move into management, maybe within a few months even. I have a friend who was just hired at Sell-Off Vacations, I believe. Oh, I forget what it is now. I think it's Sell-Off. It's either that or Trip Central, but I think it was Sell-Off because they have a storefront location still. Anyway, he got hired, and at the same time, somebody else left the office. And because he has previous management experience, he was moved up pretty much on his first day from being a travel agent to being the manager. So you can really move up quickly in the industry, which is great. So what are some things that travel agents need to know? We've gone through lots of these, so this is more of a review right at this point. Office procedures, systems of booking. Where do you go to book what kind of product? Maybe you're going to Air Canada's travel agent website to book a domestic flight, but maybe you're going to Sabre to book an international flight. Each agency has its own systems of operation and their own rules of what to book where. Reference materials, we'll get into that a little bit more today, but where do you find more information to tell your clients? Fare selection and ticketing, you know what that is now thanks to your GDS classes, whether it's Apollo or Sabre, or maybe even a different program as you get into the industry. Sales skills, it absolutely is a sales job. I didn't realize until I started how sales based it is. Every month you have targets to reach in terms of money, profit. In my job currently, it's based on passengers. So it's still a sales job. How many passengers am I selling and am I meeting those targets? Agency operations, that's this entire class. You need to know geography. I think I've told you some of the stories where my coworkers got confused. There are sometimes more than one city. There are some cities in this world that have the same name. San Jose, Costa Rica, San Jose, California. There's a bunch of them. And if you send the wrong, send a passenger to the wrong place, that's an expensive mistake to have to make. Counseling skills, that's part of sales. People will come into you and say, I want to go somewhere, but I don't know where. Great, now we need to narrow it down from almost 200 countries down to a destination that's perfect for you. Cultural and political knowledge sounds maybe for some of you a little bit boring, but you need to know about it. For instance, right now, you probably would not send a passenger to Eastern Ukraine. Okay, but only if you know and only if you read the news would you know why that's probably not advised. And product knowledge. So how do you keep up with product knowledge? If somebody comes in and says, I want to go to this specific resort, how do you know about that resort? That's called product knowledge. How do you get more information about a place or a product. It doesn't have to be a resort. It could be a tour company. It could be a cruise line. How do you get that knowledge? The best way is to actually experience it yourself on a FAM. But of course, we can't do FAMs every destination and use every product. So there's different ways to find product knowledge. So how do you keep up without your brain exploding? There are reference materials that make up travel trade publications, industry presentations, seminars, and trade shows, FAM trips, clients, and your coworkers will tell you information as well. So going through each of those, you have some reference materials. You have your standard references as a travel agent that you would refer to. So it's called a reference. So TripAdvisor, very honest feedback. You can always, well, you have to take everything, they say take it with a grain of salt. It means realize that it is subjective. It is subject to other people's opinions. So you cannot please everyone. Even a perfect product will have a negative review. But overall, TripAdvisor is usually reliable to give you firsthand feedback. Guidebooks, travel blogs, government websites, those are all standard references. Then you have information that comes from suppliers. So as a Contiki rep, a BDM or a sales manager, whatever you want to call it, I go to travel agencies and I give them information about my product. I go physically into their office and I say, hi, it's me. They know who I am because I go in frequently. And then I give them a brochure or maybe a little flyer with information on it, give them some training. And that's information coming right from the supplier. It could also be brochures and websites or an app if the supplier has one. So travel trade publications are, well, publications intended for travel agents to read. And you have a lot of different ones, and all of these are free to sign up to. So if you're interested in what's going on in the industry, if you're interested to become a travel agent, even if you're just curious to see what types of perks travel agents get, because sometimes these announce FAM trips as well, these are all linked. So when you download this PowerPoint, you can click on these links and it will lead you to those travel trade websites where you can read articles right there, or you can get these magazines in print as well. So that's another way to get product knowledge, to learn about what you're selling. Another way is industry presentations, seminars, and trade shows. So of course, these have been put on hold for the time being, but when they start back up again, and when they were happening, I can tell you that they were excellent events. You network, you meet other people, you find new opportunities, you find new clients, and you learn so much about the product. So this is not a travel trade show. You can tell here it's probably tech or something. But at a travel trade show, you would have different suppliers. So Contiki would have a booth, Air Canada Vacations, WestJet Vacations, all of cruise lines, maybe insurance companies. They would all have their own booth. And you would have travel agents going from booth to booth, getting new information and stuff. There would be seminars and presentations during that trade show as well. So it was always really fun to work those shows. And I'm excited for them to come back. So those are used by tourist boards, like DMOs, destination marketing organizations, suppliers, trade associations. So IATA would have a booth, ACTA would have a booth, TICO would have a booth. And the purpose is to keep these travel agents informed. It's another way to get product knowledge and stay up to date. And the fun part is that they often come with free food and free stuff, whether it's swag. I went to a training with Transat Holidays once, Air Transat Holidays, and it was in Hamilton. And actually, I went with our guest speaker who's coming in tomorrow to talk to the class. I went with her, with Kate. And as we walked in, you should always have your business card as a salesperson. You put your business card in like a bucket. And during this seminar, they were giving away prizes, and they said, okay, the next prize is a free trip to Portugal, I believe it was. And the person pulled out a business card, and we could both see from far away that it was a Flight Centre business card. And we were the only 2 people there from Flight Centre, so we knew it was one of us two who won the trip. Anyway, it turned out to be Kate, so she won a free trip to Portugal just for going to one of these trade shows. So it's pretty exciting that it happened. Speaking of free trips, we will now talk about FAMs for a while. And this picture was for my very first FAM. I got hired at Flight Centre in February. And in July or August, I had my first FAM, and we went to Jamaica for 4 or 5 days. And it was free, of course, because you had to go. It was for work, so it was free. And that was just my first one of several FAM trips. So we call it a FAM trip, but it's short for familiarization. It's meant for you to become familiar with the product. So in this case, we stayed at a Sandals resort, the luxury adults only all-inclusive chain. So when we came back to Canada, I was really familiar with the Sandals resorts, and I was able to sell them more easily. So it's a free trip, usually free. Sometimes you just get a discount if it's a bit more of a expensive product, but in this case, Jamaica was free, and it's hosted by a supplier. So ours was together. Sandals was one, and Air Canada brought us there, Air Canada Vacations. And so it was just Flight Centre employees on that plane. They chartered the aircraft for us. So we had about, I think it was around 300, 400 travel agents down at Sandals. It was just Flight Centre travel agents from across the country. FAM trips happen, but they're not a right. They don't just automatically come with the job. They're a privilege. They're not really holidays. I mean, they are. You're somewhere nice, you're somewhere hot and fun, but you do have to work. And you have to do certain things. You have to pay attention to certain things. So this was at Sandals in Ocho Rios in Jamaica. What's expected of travel agents on a FAM? So you have to file a written report. You have to write a report and say, this is where we went. There's something called site inspections, and that's something you should remember, site inspections. Basically, that means you're going to different hotels or resorts and inspecting them. So you go to different room types. Somebody will walk you around and say, this is our ocean view room. This is our ocean front room, and this is the difference between the two. And then, so you'll have to write a little report after you do your site inspection. So site inspection is like a tour, but they call it a site inspection. So that's something you should remember the name of. So you'll need to think of like, how many restaurants are at this resort? How many pools? Is the resort accessible? In terms of if someone is in a wheelchair, can they go to this resort? Are there ramps or are there only stairs? You'd have to pay attention to that. Are there vegetarian options and vegan options? If someone has other dietary needs, maybe based on religion, will they cater to that? So all of these different things you need to figure out in your site inspection, and then you write a report when you get back. Write a thank you note. Say, thank you, Sandals. Thank you, Air Canada Vacations, for sending me on this trip. That way you get to go on more. The reason I'm wearing pants and a long sleeve dress shirt at a beach is because that was the day we flew down to Jamaica. We got off the plane. This is in Montego Bay, and we had to dress business casual for the flight. So there I am in 2013, and in business casual clothes. And that's why I'm dressed like that on a beach. Show respect for paying passengers. People are staying at your hotel that paid, in this case, a lot of money. Sandals is expensive. So, you know, don't walk up to the swim up to the swim up bar and say, hey, guess what? I'm here for free. You know, just be a bit respectful of other people who've paid to be there. Participate in all FAM activities. Maybe you have a meeting at 8 a.m. And we have in the industry, it's like work hard, play hard. If you want to party, that's fine, but show up and do your work during the day. Be punctual, be on time, don't be late, and be polite. Remember, this is quite often you're on FAMs, it's a global situation. You're traveling with people from all over the world. So not only are you representing your company, but you're representing your country as well. Maybe you're the only person from, in my case, Canada. So be polite, be punctual, be respectful. So things to pay attention to on FAMs, I already mentioned a lot of them. In the case of the resort, it was the actual amenities. How far is it from the airport? Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. That resort that I was at on the beach, that was a Sandals in Montego Bay, Sandals Resort. And it was really close to the airport. Like I could probably wave to the people in the terminal. So some people like that because they don't have to travel far when they land in destination, but others might not because it was a bit noisy. There was planes all the time. But aside from resorts, I've done cruise FAMs and tour FAMs. I've even done an insurance FAM that brought us to Windsor in Ontario. But all different things to pay attention to on different types, like the cruise ship, for example. Just a quick little cruise over to Bahamas. I think it was 4 days. And I had to think of what cruisers might enjoy. So how easy is it to book an excursion? Can you book a future cruise on the ship? Is there a kids club? What does it look like? What kind of facilities do they have for kids? All of that kind of stuff. So you do have to work. It is a lot of fun though, to be honest. So how do you go on a FAM? So sometimes it's based on sales volume. The more you sell, the more you can qualify to go on a FAM. You can be selected by the manager of your travel agency to go. It can be based on seniority, which means the person who has been working at that office the longest, they would be chosen first. They have the most seniority. By destination, maybe you haven't gone yet to an all-inclusive resort and they say you should go on this FAM, so you have experience now. On rotation, so you take turns. Maybe first it's me, second it's someone else, third it's someone else, and then it goes back to me. You can expect 1 to 2 a year free trips or FAMs. And quite often your travel agency will give you FAM allowance. So they give you a certain amount of money to put towards FAMs. Most FAMs, the flights are not included unless it might be an all-inclusive. So for example, my cruise FAM, Royal Caribbean gave me a free cruise, but I had to get there. I had to fly to the departure port. So FAM allowance is some money that your travel agency gives you to be able to travel on FAMs. So that would cover part of the flight or maybe all of the flight. Really good question in the chat. Can you bring your family on FAM trips? Usually no. It's usually only for travel agents, but sometimes you can have your travel agent would get the free trip and then a companion might get 50% off, but you probably couldn't bring your whole family. They do have something called do-it-yourself FAMs, DIY FAMs, where you can get a discounted rate. Sunwing is a good example. And Air Canada Vacations, they do it-yourself FAMs. And that's where you can, I did one, there's no activities to do. It's just a trip, really. So I went to Mexico to Moon Palace Resort, and it cost me, I think, like $300 for the week to do the FAM. And in that case, I could bring whoever I'd like to bring with me. But so usually no, but there are times where you can bring a partner or maybe your whole family, really. But I've been on, I don't know, I'll show you how many, and only one of them was I allowed to bring someone else. And honestly, sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time. When I was a travel agent, we had Hard Rock Resorts come in, which is another luxury all-inclusive chain in the Caribbean. Hard Rock. And they came in to do a training. Her name was Sarah Smith, and she was the rep. She was the BDM for Hard Rock. And she did a training, and afterwards she said, oh, can I get anyone coffee? Let's go to Starbucks. I'll buy you whatever, which is very common. As a rep, I have a company card that I can just spoil people with. And so I said, great, I'll go with you. I'll help carry the drinks. And easy as that. We were in line and I was saying, you know what, I've never been to a Hard Rock and I think it would be great to try it out. And she said, well, we have a FAM next month. Do you want to come? I said, sure. And that happened more than once, where I would go into work for just my regular 9 to 5, not knowing what the day would bring, and I would leave with a trip. That was the case for my Hard Rock trip to Mexico. I believe that was what happened with India. And once I had to turn down a trip, it was really sad, but I didn't have the time, the holiday time to take off. I didn't have vacation time. But On the Go came in, I think I've told you this actually, where there was a trip to Africa and he said, do you want to go? We had someone cancel, but the trip is in 2 weeks. Can you go with us? So sometimes the problem is you have to turn down all the free trips that come towards you. So where can you go? Typically, this is what it looks like. Junior agents, so newer travel agents, can go to Florida or Caribbean or Bahamas. Intermediate agents, maybe someone who's been there 2 years plus, could go to Europe or Greece or take some cruises. And then people who've been there a bit longer, maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years plus, can go Africa, Asia, South Pacific. But that said, I mean, I went all over the place and I only worked there for 4.5 years. So let's see where I went just quickly, just for fun. Jamaica, the Sandals Resort, that's what I showed you. And then my Mexico Hard Rock Resort. India, On the Go tours, Turks and Caicos. So these are all FAM trips. They were all free. India and Turks and Caicos were about 3 days apart from each other. I got home from India, slept, did my laundry, repacked, and went to Turks and Caicos. Royal Caribbean Cruise, and then this was a Contiki FAM. I didn't work for them at the time, but I took a FAM. Germany, Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, and then Costa Rica, and another one to Contiki. This is now I work for Contiki with the second Germany trip. Germany, Austria, Slovenia, Croatia. As a FAM, you usually have someone from the company with you. And in this case, the most recent one on the screen, I was leading the FAM. So I was hosting it. I had 20 or 30 travel agents with me, and I was showing them the product and how it all works. England was the conference. Again, Germany, Austria, again. Italy, England, Scotland, that was another conference. And Ireland, that was another conference. So those were all free. Sometimes you get discounted FAMs or discounted trips for different reasons, maybe not always FAMs, but Egypt was discounted, another Mexico trip. So Hard Rock and lots of different resorts out there. When you're a travel agent, for example, Hard Rock, every week that I sold, I would get 1 free night. So if you sell 7 weeks, so you sell 7 people, let's say, for a week in Mexico at the Hard Rock, I would get a free week myself. So that's what I did at that point. That was the Sunwing Do-It-Yourself FAM that I mentioned. Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, that was an incentive trip. So I got to go there discounted with Contiki, same with Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay. My Southern Africa trip was, like, when I say discounted, I mean just a few $100s for these. And then for my work, it takes me across the country all the time well, it used to before COVID, but it takes me across the country to visit different places for work. So that is another way. Remember, we're talking about how to get product knowledge. How do you learn about what you're selling as a travel agent? Clients will tell you, usually negatively, their honest opinion. So that's a good way to get some product knowledge, is from clients, but you need to be careful because usually people complain. People are more likely to complain than they are to go out of their way to compliment. So here we are on how to keep up, how to remember all these changing things remember about different resorts and all of that. Clients, they will give you honest feedback, but it's more likely to be negative. Excuse me. Welcome back phone calls are a great way to get knowledge. And I mentioned this before, but you can guide that conversation. Hi, welcome back. You've been home for 3 days, 4 days. How was the trip? They'll say, great, 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 but this was less than desirable. They'll say something negative usually, but you can steer that conversation. You can say, what was your favorite part? And then they'll start talking about something positive again. And that way you can also advise future clients and you can say, well, I sent someone here last month and they loved it, but it was a little big for them. So the resort, there was a lot of walking, or maybe there was lots of hills, just so you know, in case you're not so mobile. Maybe they're a bit older. And that way you can get some feedback. Coworkers, they will give you the most unbiased opinion. That's really important to remember. Coworkers will look at a place more objectively, meaning they don't really impose their opinion as much. So they will say this was good, this was bad. And after they go back and they come back from FAMs, they will write reports. And so coworkers will have unbiased opinion, meaning they won't say this was terrible and this is why, and that's just their opinion. They will say this was good, this was bad, based on their experience at different properties in the case of an all-inclusive, or different cruises or tours or whatever the trip might be. Everyone has a specialty. Maybe they visited a destination, maybe they come from a destination, or they've studied there or worked there. At a travel agency or in any type of sales, really, if you have a specialty, which is why your project is all about specialties, niches, you're more likely to convert a sale. You're more likely to change an inquiry into a sale. Someone comes into the office and says, I'd love to go to Disney. Then I would say, you should go to speak to Christina. She's our Disney expert. That way we would make more sales. If they came to me, I've been to Disney, but I don't know as much detail maybe as they want to know. So travel agents should recommend based on informed feedback, not personal opinion. Travel agents should trust ratings. If they haven't been to a place, maybe look up ratings on TripAdvisor or FIFO. Those are both examples of unbiased, well, they're a bit biased depending on who goes, but if you have enough results, if you have enough reviews, then they're trustworthy. Know the locations of destinations. Hopefully you paid attention in your destinations courses to geography, whether it's climate or political situation even as well, what kind of transportation is available. If you send someone to Machu Picchu, give them time. If you send someone to Bolivia, give them time, because the elevation is really high. Some people might need 2 or 3 days just to rest and get used to that elevation. Realize that just because a destination is not being advertised doesn't mean that it's a bad place to send clients. And educate. Always be learning. Go to these seminars, not just for the free trips and free food, but for the knowledge. Participate in trainings. Read those travel trade publications. A great way to learn about the product is even on YouTube. If you're looking and you think, I wonder what this tour is like, look it up on YouTube. There's probably someone who's done it and documented it. So according to the Travel Industry Act, which is of course part of this course, a lot of this course is travel agency operations, but remember it's called and legalities. So we have to bring it back to the laws from time to time. Travel Industry Act says that you need to know what travel services you sold your clients, be aware of any changes that affect those travel services, communicate those changes to your clients, and advise clients of their rights. So again, it's sometimes boring to just read something without understanding how it applies to examples. So in this case, what if there's an airline schedule change? Imagine you're a travel agent and you booked a passenger. They leave your office. That airline knows the travel agent's contact information, but they might not know how to contact the passenger. So the airline will send me a schedule change. They say, I realize that your flight was at 8 p.m. Now it's at 3 p.m. Just so you know. So as a travel agent, I see that. I have to tell the client as soon as I possibly can that there's been a change. If I don't, if I forget, that passenger shows up to the airport for an 8 p.m. flight and their plane is already gone. So that could be a big problem. So it's my responsibility as a travel agent to tell that passenger that their airline schedule has changed. Same with hotel constructions. Maybe a hotel emails me as the travel agent and says, just so you know, we're renovating the East Wing, which means that 3 restaurants and 1 pool will be closed. I need to tell that to my client. Natural disasters. Usually they make the news, but one time, I don't remember the exact year, but when I was a travel agent, so between early 13 and mid 17, 2013 and 2017, there was an earthquake in Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal. And I had a passenger come in the same day, and I read that there was an earthquake, and he said, I'd really want to go to Nepal. Can you send me there? And of course, I had to tell him, by law, I had to tell him that there was an earthquake. And so he said, okay, maybe I'll go somewhere else. And on the same hand, suppliers have to tell the travel agent if something changes. And this happens all the time. It happened to me recently. Today's Thursday, tomorrow, so 2 weeks tomorrow, which means 2 weeks from tomorrow, I'm going to Mexico. And there was a schedule change on my flight. And that flight, the airline told me about it, so I knew about it. But if I booked with the travel agent would know and they would have to then tell me. So here's some examples. Let's see whose fault it is. Who's responsible? So there's a schedule change on the air portions and the airline did not advise the travel agent. The client missed the flight. Who's responsible? So we have 3 people involved. We have the supplier, the airline, we have the travel agent, and we have the client. So whose fault is it? Who's responsible for that passenger missing their flight? There was a schedule change and the airline did not advise the travel agent. It's kind of a question of where did the information stop? Did the client know about it? No. Obviously, they missed their flight. Let's say it's this poor lady who's got a headache. Did the travel agent know about it? No, because the airline didn't tell the travel agent. So in this case, it's the airline who messed up. The airline is responsible to tell the travel agent. Now, if a flight was booked in GDS, so in Apollo, in Sabre, some other GDS, it's automatic. As a travel agent, there's a special way you can, every day you would look at this, they call it a queue. You would look at your queue and it says, these are all schedule changes that you need to deal with today. So you would look at those, phone call the client and say, there's been a schedule change, just so you know. And then you would hang up and then you would accept it. There's a code to type to say, yep, the client knows about it. And then you move on. All right, here we go. The schedule change. Now the schedule change was sent to the travel agent, but the travel agent forgot to tell the client. Now that one's pretty obvious. That one is going to be the travel agent's fault. The travel agent is responsible because where did the information stop? So the client didn't know, but the travel agent did know and they just forgot. So that's a big problem. And mistakes happen. They really do. But in the travel industry, mistakes are really expensive. You would have to pay for that client to get on the next flight to get where they're going. Maybe they had a hotel booked and they're not going to stay at that hotel for one night. You might need to pay for that. So it can be really expensive. So complaints. How do you deal with complaints? There is a process. It's normal. It's normal to have complaints. They're usually not personal. So it's easy to get upset and it's easy for one person to ruin your day. It really is. And that's in any field. You could work at Tim Hortons and have an 8-hour shift and one angry person ruins your day. It's true. And it's normal to feel that way. But in the travel industry, it's especially difficult because they can't return their product. They can't say, I didn't enjoy this trip. I'd like to return it with this receipt. So there's some ways to deal with complaints. And some complaints are legitimate. You know, they say the customer is always right. Of course, that's not true. We all know that. Sometimes complaints are ridiculous, but sometimes they're true and valid. So they changed my return flight time and I missed my flight. That's a big problem. They switched my hotel when I arrived. Another big problem. They promised me full breakfast every day, but I only received muffins. Okay, problem, maybe not big, but it's still a problem. The weather was awful. It rained every day. Nothing we can do about that, really. But so how do you handle these complaints? Sometimes people have paid thousands of dollars, so they can be pretty upset. How do you handle complaints? First step, and this is really important for your work life, but also for tests, empathize and listen. Say, oh, that's really terrible. I'm so sorry that happened. Do more listening than talking. Then you ask the passenger to put the complaint in writing. So again, a travel agency is an intermediary. They don't own the product. If there was a schedule change and the passenger was not informed and that we didn't change the flight of that time, the airline did. So in this case, the complaint is not with me, it's with, let's say, Air Canada. So you have to ask the client to put the complaint in writing and ask in that writing exactly what happened and what they want. Maybe they just wanted to complain. Maybe they want some money back. Maybe they want a credit, whatever they want. Make sure that they put it in the letter. Add a cover letter. So another page in front of their letter that says, hi, my name's Ian. I'm the travel agent for this client. This is what the client wants. This is what I want. This is what I expect. And then after you get a response, you follow up with the supplier and you follow up with the client. At that point, the last step is to involve TICO. You don't want to involve TICO if you don't have to. There's a lot of paperwork and it doesn't look good for your agency to be in trouble with TICO. So we saw some legitimate complaints, but here we will now see some real complaints, but they're ridiculous. So that's the face I had when I was hearing these complaints. I didn't get these personally, but I have heard some of them personally, but I found these online, but I'm not surprised that people have told this to travel agents. The beach was too sandy. No one told us there would be fish in the sea. The children were startled. This must have been written by, yeah, someone from England. It took us 9 hours to fly home to England from Jamaica. It only took the Americans 3 hours. These are complaints, real complaints. I was bitten by a mosquito. No one said they could bite. This one I did hear a lot. No one spoke English in Spain. I mean, obviously, when people say that to me, like, oh, I didn't like it in this country because no one spoke English. Well, of course, no one spoke English. You're in a different country. I mean, that's like someone from Japan coming to Canada and saying, oh, I didn't like it in Canada. Nobody spoke Japanese. Like, of course they didn't. You're in a different country. It's part of the experience. It can be frustrating, but that's not a reason not to like a place. And the last one, it's your duty as a travel agent to advise us of noisy or unruly guests before we travel. So you kind of have to predict that a noisy guest might be there while they're there at the same time. ridiculous complaints. But at the same time, you can't just laugh at a person. You have to empathize and listen. One of my clients, oh, I'm having flashbacks. One of my clients came in. It's better when it's by email because then you can laugh if you want to. But she came in and she sat in front of me, and it was a problem. She went to a hotel that was not in good shape. And usually, if someone books anything less than 4 stars, I would write on their invoice and say, client is accepting the risks of staying at a 3-star, and then they would sign it. So I was probably off the hook, but she was on the toilet in her hotel and the ceiling caved in. The ceiling tiles fell down on her. She was okay. She wasn't hurt. But the way she was telling the story was, it shouldn't have been funny, but it was. And so I had to just empathize and say, oh, wow, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. You know, the steps are always the same. The first step is to empathize, to say, oh, no, that's awful. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And listen to the details before you start to try to fix things. All right, so ACTA, this is where our third guest speaker is joining us from. This is in March, I believe I said earlier, March 11th, from the Association of Canadian Travel Agencies. And they are an organization that supports travel agents and travel agencies through training, product support. They also offer CTC certification. CTC. And that is, you know, when you get an email from someone and they might have letters after their name, depending on the field, you might want to see different letters. So as a travel agent, you can say Ian Kivel, CTC. And what that does, it tells people that you have extra experience, because in order to get certified, you have to do the following. You have to enroll, of course, just like TICO, you need to register with them. You have to write and complete a 125 question exam, and you have to have either worked 1,800 hours or produce $600,000 in sales every year. So to have CTC after your name, it means that you've got experience. And then you have to be evaluated by your agency owner or manager. So it can be valuable to have this. If you finish a school program like Mohawk, if you have your tourism diploma, then you get 180 hours towards your 1,800, towards your 1,800 hours. So ACTA, the CTC certification, those come with standards, and those standards are broken down into 4 categories: professionalism, operations, sales and customer service, and of course, the travel product itself. How much do you know your product that you're selling? So this might not happen right away for you. You need to get in the industry, and this is specifically for travel agents. Another word for travel agent is travel counselor. They call them different things: travel manager, international travel consultant. They're all the same thing. I just say travel agent because it applies to everyone. Actually, one guy that I worked with once, he ended up starting his own travel agency, and his title was Memory Creation Specialist. So you can really just call yourself whatever you'd like to call yourself. But it all means the same thing. You're all travel agents. So this, as a travel agent, you should aim to have your CTC, to have your certified travel counselor designation. It gives people extra confidence. So India Alpha November, Kilo India Victor Echo Lima Lima. I imagine most of you are thinking, what did he just say? That is my name, Ian Kivel, in what we call the phonetic alphabet. Now, as a travel agent and as a professional anywhere in the industry, you will be using the phonetic alphabet. And that means if I call an airline and I make a reservation, I will be speaking this way. They might say, what is the passenger's first name? And I would say, India Alpha November. And that tells them that my first name is Ian, I-A-N, India Alpha November. And the reason we do this is that there's no mistakes, because if I'm on the phone and I say B, that could sound like V, it could sound like D. So mistakes, like I said, are really expensive. I've already told you in this class that one letter wrong on an airline ticket can mean that that passenger is not allowed on the plane. So that's why we use the phonetic alphabet. So take a look at this alphabet on your screen and try to spell your name. My name's really easy. It's just 3 letters. I know some of your names are longer, but take a look at this. You will need to know the phonetic alphabet for your exams. It definitely comes up again. So practice it. Practice spelling your name. If you have an airline booking, I know it's pretty rare these days to just have one waiting, but you'll see a record locator. You'll see a 6-character locator, whether it's numbers and letters or just letters. You'll see that. Practice it. Practice saying, because when I make phone calls to airlines, which I still do as a tour operator, I'd say, yes, hello, can we look at a PNR? What's the PNR? Oh, it's Echo Golf 3 Whiskey Victor 4, whatever, you know. And that's how you look it up. You definitely use this. It's not just for show. You'll use it almost every day. And so for record locators, how to spell names, but also passport numbers, because passport numbers sometimes have a few letters. Oh, here on the next slide, now that it's bigger, you can try spelling your name. And yes, excuse me, yes, it takes a while to learn, but you get really used to it quite quickly. Try to spell your name. Maybe practice it out loud if no one around you is sleeping. So come back to this. You will need to know it. You will need to learn it because, and I'm making such a big deal out of it because you use it in the industry. So you'll need to practice it and know it. Not just for the industry, but for your exam. So be familiar with it, practice it. Maybe if you're looking at a sign, a stop sign, you see Sierra, Tango, Oscar, Papa, you know, in your mind, you'll just practice different ways. Okay, that is kind of when you think of the fact that most weeks we have 2 classes. That was our first class. But since we have a guest speaker coming tomorrow, we need to get through our second class as well. And it's much more hands-on, much more practical. So don't hate me, but grab a calculator. We are doing currency conversion. It's not as scary as it sounds. Currency is another word for money. So it's kind of fun that we're talking about money. And don't worry, I will take some examples from the real world. So again, we won't just be talking theoretically. So first things first, this is a good currency exchange website. It's up to date and it has almost every currency in the world. So it's called xe.com. You can go there and you'll see different currencies and you'll be able to change currencies. For example, this is not today's rate. This is probably from a few years ago when I put this together. $1 US is $1.29 Canadian, and then it works the opposite way as well. But sometimes you don't have that tool at your disposal and you need to know how to do it manually. So there is one rule that you need to remember and memorize, and there's no easy way. You just need to say it over and over and over, and you'll remember it eventually. Multiply foreign, divide Canadian. Now you don't know what that means yet, but that's all you need to remember. So write that down, highlight it, put a little sticker, a little star beside it, write it down on your hand right now. Actually, don't do that, but something to remember. Multiply foreign, divide Canadian. Multiply foreign, divide Canadian. So write that down. I'll give you some time because you'll need to remember that on the next slide. Already, multiply foreign, divide Canadian. however you want to remember that. Maybe there's a trick you can use that the first letter of each of those can spell a little phrase or something. Maybe if you multiply the time that you're spending in foreign countries, you're dividing the time you're spending in Canada. However you'd like to remember it, multiply foreign, divide Canadian. Okay, I trust you have that written down now. You have it highlighted somewhere. Let's practice. So here's an example. You need to send US dollars to a hotel as a travel agent. The rate of the hotel is 89 US dollars. So how much do you send in Canadian? Okay, that along with this, 1 US dollar equals $1.29693. You will get both of those pieces of information when you do your currency exercises. You will get the cost of something, in this case, a hotel, and you will get what we call an ROE, or a rate of exchange. In this case, it says $1 US is $1.29693 Canadian. So the first thing you need to remember is what's our rule. Hopefully I gave you enough time to write it down. Sorry, my cat has infiltrated my office. Needs to be addressed. Get out of here. What is the rule? Do you remember? Multiply what? Divide what?
Multiply foreign, divide Canadian.
Yeah, so multiply foreign, divide Canadian. So what does that mean? Let's put it into practice now. So first you find your 1 unit. Where in that information, so just in the first 2 points, number 1, where it says the circumstance, the example, the scenario. Number 2, where you've got your rate of exchange. So actually it will always be in the rate of exchange. Where does it say 1 blank? Is it 1 USD or is it 1 Canadian? So you look for the 1 unit that's shown. In this case, you see 1 USD. Okay, it's not 1 Canadian, it's 1.29693 Canadian. So you look for just the 1 unit and we see that it's USD. So now we have, oh good, I'm glad people like the cat. Now we have our rule, multiply foreign, divide Canadian. So our 1 unit, where it says 1 blank, is USD. Is USD foreign or is it Canadian? I mean, the answer is right on the screen, it's foreign. Remember, this is coming from the perspective of being here in Canada. If you're an international student, then pretend you're here. Well, we do currency conversion. So based on the fact that Canadian is here, everything else will be foreign for us. So hopefully I haven't lost anyone yet. You have your 2 pieces of information on the screen now. You have your scenario, you have the situation, $89 US for a hotel, and the rate of exchange, the ROE. 1 US dollar is $1.29693 Canadian. Multiply foreign, divide Canadian. Look for the value of 1 unit. That's your step number 1, and that is here. 1 US dollar. That's where it says 1 blank. 1 blank. It doesn't say 1 Canadian. There's more than that. 1 US. So that's foreign. Now we multiply. That's where the multiply foreign, divide Canadian rule comes from. So we're going to take the cost of the hotel and multiply, because our 1 unit was foreign, so we'll multiply. 89 multiplied by the rate of exchange. So that looks like this. We have the same scenario at the top. We will have our rate of exchange multiplied by the cost of what we're buying. Okay, so if maybe a thumbs up, if you're good, or more importantly, if you're not good, maybe like a panicky emoji or a red X or something that indicates to me that you're panicking and it's too early for math. Otherwise, we'll move on. There's more than one example, so we'll be able to practice, don't worry. Now, there's still something wrong with this. There's still something wrong. In dollars, we have dollars and we have cents. And we only have 100 cents before you get to a dollar, which means that we have too many numbers here. So we're going to round to 2 decimal points, what we call 200ths of the dollar. So easy way to do that, we only want 2 numbers to the right of the decimal, which we call a period. In email addresses, it's called a dot. To the right of that, we want just 2 numbers. So you'll look at the third number. In this case, it's a 6. And this is called rounding. So look at the third number to the right of the one that you want to keep. So the third number, if it's between 0 and 4, we'll keep the previous number. In this case, it's a 2. We'll keep it the same. If it's between 5 and 9, you increase the previous number by 1. So we have a 6, which of course is between 5 and 9. So we'll take the previous number, which is a 2, and we'll increase that by 1 because the 6 is between 5 and 9. So $115.42,677 becomes $115.43. Okay, we'll look at other examples, don't worry. But you can see down in the last sentence, the last half of it, if it was 115.42277, what would happen? So it's always based on the third number. Don't worry about the other ones. If it's between 0 and 4, it stays the same. So in that case, it would be $115.42. So let's practice again. This is some real life examples because it's more interesting to deal with real stuff. So when I was in South Africa, I went to a market and I bought one of these handmade beaded penguins. They said it would be 100 South African rand or ZAR. I'm at the market. I have no idea how much that is. I don't have Wi-Fi on my phone. I don't have the internet. I can't go to the exchange website. How do I know how much that cost? Well, let's say I had the exchange rate written down. So it would be 100 rand, 100 ZAR, and we have the exchange rate. So those are the 2 pieces of information you would get once again. So we look for the 1 unit. Where does it say 1 blank? Is it foreign or is it Canadian? Is it 1 foreign or is it 1 Canadian? In this case, it's 1 ZAR, 1 South African rand. Is that foreign or is it Canadian? And you think to yourself, okay, rand is not Canadian, so it's foreign. So what we'll do is multiply the other 2 numbers. We'll multiply the cost of this beaded penguin, which they have in South Africa. I'm sure you remember that from Destination the World. Funny to think that Africa has penguins, but it's true. The water is really, really cold. Off the coast of Cape Town, that's where I got it. That's where I saw the penguins. So we'll take the cost of the penguin, which is 100 ZAR, and multiply by the rate of exchange. So take some time, get out your calculators and see if you can tell me how much it is in Canadian. If you're not comfortable with rounding, if you need some practice, you can just type in the answer that you get from your calculator. But if you are comfortable with rounding, you can give me the final price. And remember the steps. You look for the 1 unit. So where does it say one blank? And if that blank is Canadian, we divide. If that one blank is foreign, we multiply. So I've got some correct answers coming up in the chat. Good job. So first things first, that's what you would see on your calculator, 8.93803. And you look at the third number, and because it's between 5 and 9, you will change the previous number and increase it by 1. So what you see in the chat, $8.94 Canadian, that is correct. Great, let's move on. Next example. When I was in Siem Reap, Cambodia, I bought a fake Rolex. I have since lost it, I'm very sad to say, but it was a beautiful replica. And once the battery died, or I wanted to change the band or something, and I brought it into a watch repair place, and they said, no, you can't do that here. You need to send it to Rolex. And they were shocked when I told them it was fake. I bought it from a stall at a market, and behind me there was a bunch of fish laid out on ice. It was wonderful, great market. Anyway, the watch cost me 122,454.89 Cambodian rial. And we see that our exchange rate is 1 Cambodian rial equals 0.000326651. You look at where it says 1 blank. Is your 1 unit foreign, or is the 1 unit Canadian? And then you remember your rule. And see if you can tell me how much the watch cost. And this will probably only make sense one way. If you divide it, it won't really make sense. So you'll notice you were wrong. So let's walk our way through it. Step 1 is to find where is the 1 unit. Where does it say 1 blank? Oh, you missed a 0 in your calculation probably. Where does it say 1 blank? So you have 1 KHR. So that that is foreign, 1 foreign amount. So we would multiply. So you take your cost of the item, 122,454.89, multiply it by the rate of exchange, and we have 40, 0.0000, and a bunch of other numbers. So the third number is a 0, so we keep it the same, and the final price is 40. Good. So yeah, correct math for the most part. I know it's early. I think 2 more examples just to really drive it home. Okay, when I was in Norway, I got 6 chicken wings and a beer in this town that you see called Bergen. It cost 288 Norwegian krona. Let's just call it NOK. The exchange rate was $1 Canadian for 6.94501 NOK. How much was my lunch? So remember the steps. Don't just multiply, because that's what we've been doing so far. Do it step by step. Where's the 1 unit? Where does it say 1 blank? And then is it foreign or is it Canadian? What's the rule? Multiply foreign, divide Canadian. Multiply foreign, divide Canadian. Remember that. As long as you remember that, you'll be fine. So things have changed a little bit, and work on calculating that answer and put it in the chat when you're ready. But in this case, we see the 1 blank, 1 Canadian. So our 1 unit, is it foreign or is it Canadian? In this case, it has changed. So what you're going to do now is divide. So you'll take the cost of the product, divide it by the rate of exchange. So what am I buying? And then what's the rate of exchange? So 288 NOK divided by 6.94. Oh, I've given you the answer. Oh, my apologies, before anyone had the chance to answer themselves. So it turns out to be 41.46, and then a lot of numbers, but you only have to think of the third one, which is between 5 and 9. So we change it to 41.47. And remember what I bought: 6 chicken wings and a beer. Norway is not cheap. Last one. Last example. This was the trip I had to cancel, as you all know, in 2020. I was supposed to go to Bolivia, but COVID typed XI enter, which is, of course, a GDS joke, if you can call it that. It canceled those plans. So, but while I was in Chivica, I was supposed to stay in a hotel made out of salt, which you see in the picture here. They charged there. They charged extra for a hot shower. So the shower was 10 Bolivianos, 10 bob. The exchange rate was $1 Canadian equals 5.19706 bob. How much would I have had to pay for my hot shower on top of it? If I just wanted a cold shower, it was free, but I would have had to pay extra. So the 1 unit, is it Canadian or is it foreign? We see 1 Canadian. Okay, great. So now we take, oh no, let me see what's coming up next so I don't give away the answer this time. So the rule is, remember, what do we do with Canadian currency? So we will take the cost of the product and do something with it, either multiply or divide by the rate of exchange. Yeah, you got it. You got it right. So we take our 10 bob, 10 Bolivian Bolivianos, divided by the rate of exchange, and we have $1.92. And nothing changes because that third number is between 0 and 4. Okay, so looks like you're pretty good with it. Don't worry, there's practice, there's an assignment about currency exchange just to really help you prepare for the exam. And don't worry if math is not your strong point. I think maybe there's 2 questions on the exam that are currency exchange related. Maybe 3, but nothing too serious. Okay, so sounds good. Looks like you're all set. There is a currency conversion assignment. Again, it's due before next class. So before next Thursday by 8 in the morning, it's always best to get it in early. Next week, we have some TICO review. Our first class will be TICO review for the TICO exam. So we'll go through some sample TICO questions, some definitions. We'll look at some of the law of the Travel Agency Act and how it relates to TICO. So that's all during the first class. Make sure you come with your manual, probably PDF, and make sure that you've looked through that manual, because this will be more of a review. You'll be asked some questions and then you'll be asked for the answers. So by this point, you will have looked through the TICO training manual. You will have familiarized yourself with the modules. Maybe you've even completed the sample self-assessment tests at the end of each of those modules as well. So we'll do that next week, first class. And then the second class, you have your guest speaker, Vice President of Operations from TICO. The following week, February 14th to the 18th, class 1 will have midterm review together on Zoom. It will be about half of the class time. And then after that, you can work on your semester projects. You can do that on Zoom. I'll make some groups for you with breakout rooms. So at one point, I'll click breakout rooms and every group will be in their own Zoom room. And then I will kind of circulate between each group and see if you need any help. Class 2 is the actual midterm. And of course, we'll talk about what's on that in more detail during class 1 of week 7. So that's kind of the short and semi long-term schedule for the class. All right, good. We